Hello, and welcome to Morning Hour Chapel's Holy Week 2020 Tuesday video. Those of you who know me know that I'm a connoisseur of meat. I love to grill and barbecue at home. And if you really know me, you know I'll try to tell you all the reasons why grilling and barbecuing are two different things. But I won't do that today. I love to grill steak, seafood, pork, and chicken. I love to barbecue ribs, pork butts, and briskets. And lately I've come to love grilling lamb, usually rack of lamb, though I'm ready to do a full leg soon. Now when I go shopping to pick the meats that I'll cook, I spend a lot of time examining the meat, usually through the vacuum packaging. I look for things like surface fat, marbling, which is the fat that runs through the meat, and freshness. Are the steaks a nice red color, or do they look a little gray? I want the best possible meat for me and my family. When God moved to rescue his people Israel from slavery in Egypt, he gave instructions about what they were to do to prepare for that rescue. In Exodus 12 we read, "Tell all the congregation of Israel that on the 10th day of this month, every man shall take a lamb according to their fathers' houses, a lamb for a household. Your lamb shall be without blemish, a male a year old. You may take it from the sheep or from the goats, and you shall keep it until the 14th day of this month, when the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill their lambs at twilight. Then they shall take some of the blood, and put it on the two doorposts and the lintel of the houses in which they eat it. They shall eat the flesh that night, roasted on the fire, with unleavened bread and bitter herbs they shall eat it. And you shall let none of it remain until the morning. Anything that remains until the morning you shall burn. In this manner you shall eat it, with your belt fastened, your sandals on your feet, and your staff in your hand. And you shall eat it in haste. It is the Lord's Passover, for I will pass through the land of Egypt that night, and I will strike all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both man and beast, and on all the gods of Egypt I will execute judgments. I am the Lord. The blood shall be a sign for you on the houses where you are, and when I see the blood I will pass over you, and no plague will befall to destroy you when I strike the land of Egypt." God wanted Israel to pick the best possible animal for the Passover meal they were about to eat. This meal was considered a sacrifice, but like many Old Testament sacrifices, when the animal was killed, God wanted the Israelites to eat the meat, not just kill it for the sake of killing it. In other words, the sacrifice was to God, but it was for the people. Now when Jesus entered Jerusalem and walked into the temple, he knew he was to be sacrificed to God for all people, and he had to be without blemish. Just like when I look over the meat I buy for grilling, it was important that Jesus was examined for any sign of imperfection. Now throughout the week before his crucifixion, the chief priests and Pharisees tested Jesus as he taught in the temple daily. In Luke chapter 20, verses 19 to 40, we read of two specific tests the religious leaders used to try to get Jesus to say something they could arrest him for. Starting in verse 19, "The scribes and the chief priests sought to lay hands on him at that very hour, for they perceived that he had told this parable against them, but they feared the people. So they watched him and sent spies who pretended to be sincere, that they might catch him in something he said, so as to deliver him up to the authority and jurisdiction of the governor. So they asked him, 'Teacher, we know that you speak and teach rightly and show no partiality, but truly teach the way of God. Is it lawful to give tribute to Caesar or not?' But he perceived their craftiness and said to them, 'Show me a denarius. Whose likeness and inscription does it have?' They said, 'Caesar's.' He said to them, 'Then render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's.' And they were not able in the presence of the people to catch him in what he said, but marveling at his answers, they became silent." These leaders wanted to get Jesus to say something against the government so they could arrest him and deliver him to the government for punishment. But Jesus' answer confounded them, and they stopped talking. Now let's look at the second test. in verse 27. There came to him some Sadducees, those who deny that there is a resurrection, and they asked him a question, saying, Teacher, Moses wrote for us that if a man's brother dies, having a wife but no children, the man must take the widow and raise up offspring for his brother. Now there were 7 brothers. The first took a wife and died without children, and the second and the third took her, and likewise all 7 left no children and died. Afterward the woman also died. In the resurrection, therefore, whose wife will the woman be? For the 7 had her as wife. And Jesus said to them, The sons of this age marry and are given in marriage, but those who are considered worthy to attain to that age and to the resurrection from the dead neither marry nor are given in marriage, for they cannot die any more, because they are equal to angels and are sons of God, being sons of the resurrection. But that the dead are raised, even Moses showed in the passage about the bush, where he calls the Lord the God of Abraham and the God of Isaac and the God of Jacob. Now he is not the God of the dead, but of the living, for all live to him. Then some of the scribes answered, Teacher, you have spoken well, for they no longer dared to ask him any question. This was a test of doctrine. The Sadducees didn't believe in the resurrection of the dead. They asked Jesus a question that they think he'll answer in a way that will trip him up doctrinally. And Jesus confounded them, and they stopped asking questions. Jesus, the Lamb of God that takes away the sins of the world through his death, and who conquers death through his resurrection, was tested and found to be without blemish. And just like the Passover lamb of the Israelites was to die 4 days after being selected, so Jesus died 4 days after his testing by the leaders. Now, tomorrow we'll look at some of the teaching that Jesus did in the temple in his final days. Until then, may God bless and protect you and your family.